So what does it take to turn a terrified farmer into a warrior king? Well, today we're jumping into the incredible story of Saul, who was Israel's very first king. We're going to look at the one battle that really defined his entire legacy. It's this amazing story about courage, about faith, and, about where real power actually comes from. This question right here, it really gets to the very heart of the story. I mean, what do you do when the person who's supposed to be the hero, the one you're counting on, is too scared to even show up? That was the exact situation ancient Israel found itself in. And here he is, our hero, Saul. Now, he definitely looked the part. He was tall, handsome, the whole deal. But when it was time for him to be officially presented as king, he was gone, nowhere to be found. They literally had to go looking for him, and they found him hiding among the supplies and the baggage. So yeah, reluctant king is putting it mildly. But, sometimes the only thing that can really cure fear is a massive crisis. And believe me, a crisis was coming. A horrifying threat was about to appear that would give this farmer no choice but to finally start acting like a king. So the threat? It comes from this guy, Nahash, the Ammonite. And his name, get this, his name basically means snake. That tells you everything you need to know, right? He was this ruthless enemy king who had surrounded the Israelite city of Jabesh Gilead. When the people of the city tried to surrender, Nahash hits them with this just unbelievably brutal ultimatum. You see, he didn't just want to win a battle. He wanted to mutilate them, to humiliate the entire nation of Israel. By taking out only the right eye, they could still work and pay him tribute, but they'd be branded forever with the mark of his victory. And this is where things get really weird. Nahash actually agrees to give them 7 days to find someone to rescue them. And you have to ask, why would he do that? Well, it was pure arrogance. He was so convinced that Israel was this weak, divided, cowardly nation that he was basically daring them to find a hero. He was positive nobody would answer the call. And this moment, this crisis, it becomes the thing that finally transforms Saul. This is where the guy who was hiding in the baggage becomes the warrior king that Israel so desperately needed. So these desperate messengers from the city rush to Saul's hometown, right? But they don't find a king sitting on a throne. There's no palace, no war council. Nope. They find him out in a field, just plowing with his oxen. He's still just a farmer. But when he hears the news and he sees his own people weeping, something inside him just flips. He's filled with this righteous anger, and he does something completely shocking. He takes his own oxen, cuts them into pieces, and sends them all throughout Israel with a message. Anyone who doesn't follow me into battle, this is what will happen to your oxen. Now, this echoes a really dark story from Israel's past, where a dismembered body was used to start a horrible civil war. But Saul totally flips the script. He's using this shocking, gruesome symbol not to divide Israel, but to unite it against a common enemy. He's signaling a brand new era. And you know what? His gamble pays off big time. A massive army comes together. And it turns out, Saul is a brilliant military strategist. He marches his army all through the night, he splits them into 3 divisions, and they surround the enemy camp. Then, bam, right at dawn, he launches a surprise attack. The ambush is a total success. Nahash's army is completely routed. So after this incredible, decisive victory, some of Saul's supporters get an idea. They say, hey, what about those guys who were bad-mouthing you back at the coronation? Let's execute them. But Saul, in this moment of pure greatness, shows incredible mercy. He refuses to take revenge. Instead, he gives all the credit for the victory to God. This right here, this is truly Saul's finest hour. The whole nation is celebrating. Saul is confirmed as king. It feels like a perfect storybook ending. But right in the middle of the party, as the celebration is hitting its peak, the old prophet Samuel steps forward. And he is not there to offer congratulations. Samuel uses this moment of national pride, of unity, not to praise the new king, but to confront the people. He's about to completely reframe this entire victory and remind them of a much deeper truth that they had all conveniently forgotten. He starts by giving them a little history lesson. He reminds them of this painful, repeating cycle that kept happening over and over again. It went like this. The people would sin and forget God. Then God would allow an enemy to come and oppress them. Then the people would repent and cry out for help. And what happened every single time? God sent a deliverer to rescue them. The point was simple. God had never failed them. And this is where he brings it all home. He says, look, when that snake, Nahash, showed up at your doorstep, you panicked. And instead of crying out to God for help like your ancestors always did, you demanded a human king. So here's the twist. Their demand for a king wasn't some great step forward. It was a panic move. Just like Saul hiding in the baggage, the entire nation acted out of fear and a lack of faith. To prove that he's not just making this up, that this is a message straight from God, Samuel says he's going to call for a sign. Something so powerful, so impossible, that it would force them to see just how badly they had messed up. So here's the challenge he lays down. He says, I'm going to ask God to send a thunderstorm right now. Now you have to understand why this was such a huge deal. It was the middle of the wheat harvest. This was the dry season in May or June. It never rained during the wheat harvest. A thunderstorm at this time of year would be completely unheard of, a total, undeniable miracle. And then it happens. Samuel calls out to the Lord, and the sky just rips open. Thunder, rain, the whole deal. The people are absolutely terrified, just standing there in awe of God and his prophet. The sign confirmed it. Samuel's words were true. The miracle has its intended effect. It's like a light bulb goes on, and for the first time, the people really get it. They understand what they've done. They actually confess it out loud. We have added to all our other sins the evil of asking for a king. They finally realized their choice wasn't just political, it was a spiritual sin, a rejection of their true protector. So now everyone is humbled. They're actually listening. And this is where Samuel delivers the final, unforgettable takeaway from this whole event. It's a warning for the people and, of course, for their brand new king. Samuel makes it crystal clear. He basically tells them, look, having a king doesn't change the rules of the game. He says, do not turn away from the Lord. Serve him with all your heart. He's telling them that a human king is not some magic guarantee of safety. Your real security, your only security, depends on your allegiance to God, not to a man wearing a crown. And he leaves them with this final, sobering warning. Sure, Saul was the hero of the day. He absolutely had his finest hour, but that doesn't change the most important rule. True security comes from allegiance to God. And then he says, if you persist in doing evil, both you and your king will perish. It's just such a powerful reminder that leadership, at its core, isn't about human strength. It's about where you place your ultimate trust.